Hello, hello, my friends. AmyR here with Prairie Paper and Ink. Welcome back to my face and my card making space. And a fun little birthday card using some newer-ish Mama Elephant products. I like to collect Mama Elephant everything. One of my favorites. They're so cute. I love it. So, I used this little Peekabuddies stamp and die set and a cute little sort of interactive. Well, it is an interactive wafer die. It's the Open Sesame portrait, so it opens up, and I'll show that in the video. Not the easiest to take pictures of to make it look proper, but it's so cute. So I did some coloring with my OLO markers, added a bit of glitter, all the fun things. As always, all the links to everything I used will be listed in the description box below the video. If you end up clicking on one of my links and place an order, I get a little kickback from that at no extra cost to you because my links are affiliate links. And yeah, they'll all be below along with a link to the blog post, etc. And then at the end of the video, in the end screen, I'll post my link to my playlist that I have of all the videos I've done so far using OLO markers. And yeah, let's get into making this card. So the little characters and sentiments and whatnot are from the Mama Elephant Peekabuddies stamp set. And I've got my MISTI out and some of Simon Says Stamps smooth white 120-pound cardstock. And I'm going to stamp the little images of all these little critters onto it with Simon's Intense Black ink. It's just an alcohol marker friendly ink. So I'm going to stamp that, and then I'm going to take another piece of the white cardstock and I'm going to stamp this little balloon cluster, and then there's a little trio of images. And that was another thing I really liked about this set is these little tiny images are one stamp. So there's this one, and then there's a couple other ones. Like you can do like a graduation card. There's one with little hats that you can add to the characters, and they're on one stamp. And then the wafer die actually is like one wafer die that cuts them all out at once. So I liked that. Because especially with like little tiny images, sometimes I'm like annoyed. It's like, oh, sticking them all on, just individual stamps like that just makes life a little bit easier. So stamp my images, and then I'm coloring them in with my OLO markers. This first little bit here is real time. I don't color near as fast as the magic of video editing makes it look. So I'm going to super speed this up. And for those that don't watch all of my content, because I know a lot of people don't. So for those that, watch quite a bit, this is a broken record, me going on about this, but I use my OLO markers just as they come as half markers. I have not connected them. It's just a personal preference thing for now. I am just waiting till I decide whether or not to get the refills and connect them, or I'm still holding out hope that they're going to release a fine tip version, because as of right now, OLO only has the brush tip, which is what I'm using. And then they have a chisel tip. And for me, I see no point in purchasing the chisel tips because I won't use them. That's not how I color. And yeah, my other option is to either connect two different colors to create one marker. And I don't want to do that. That bothers me. Or get a second set of brush tips. I also am not 100% sure that that's the best route I want to take, or I could get the refills because those actually are a marker barrel shape, which is all like shown and explained on the OLO website. So I use them like this, like little stublets. For me, it works. It looks awkward. Some people might not like that, but even with my hand, like I have hand issues and that, but with this, it's been fine so far. So it just looks weird. But yeah, that's how I do what I do. So it looks a little odd, but so far this has been working for me. So I just started coloring. I go darkest to lightest. That's just another convenience thing. And you can do this with any alcohol marker. And if alcohol marker coloring isn't your thing, these would look really, really cute watercolored. I almost did these, like watercolored these, but I've been enjoying just playing with my OLO markers. Oh, and the other thing, because I get asked a lot about like my Copic markers, I'm not going to compare these to Copics. I've been using Copic markers for almost 20 years, and I have the full collection. I have like kind of the OG ones before Copics changed a few years ago, and the quality issues just haven't been the same. And yeah, I love my Copics. I have no plans on you know, switching fully. I like all the coloring options, all of them. I like having options. No one needs all the things. I don't need all the things. I just like trying out all the things. So I jumped around and just colored in all these little critters. I always find personally when I first see images like this where it's like multiple critters or multiple images, and you know they're all going to need different color combos, etc., and I feel like a little overwhelmed, but I just start, you know. So I started there with the bear, and then I went on to the next one, and it just, as I start like filling in each little creature or whatever, it just starts coming together, and it's not near as overwhelming. Like, I am a classic overthinker, and yeah, I colored them all in, added a bit of dotting detail because I just like doing that and it makes it cute. And then for these clusters, I've sped this up even more. These little balloons, I did like kind of a rainbow of balloons because there was just, you know, just the right amount for that. Same thing, just went darkest to lightest, filled them all in. And then the little tiny images, I used mostly the same colors that I used for the balloons to fill in like these little bees. Like, they're tiny, but they're so cute. And then the little dandelions and these little gifts. So filled everything in, got everything colored. And then I pulled out one of my Tonic Nouveau Aqua Shimmer pens. And you always, if you are, whatever you're doing, if you're planning on doing a like white gel pen highlights, you want to do a shimmer pen like this, whether it's this brand, there's Winkostella, etc. You do this first, because if I was to add my white gel pen highlights to these images and then try to paint over that with my shimmer pen, the shimmer pen will dissolve the white gel pen. Ask me how I learned that little fact several years ago. So I add the shimmer first. It doesn't look like much on camera, even in real life when you're adding it. Sometimes that's why I have it tilted in the light so I can see where I got it. But I'll show at the end. I'll turn the flashlight on my phone at the end and show you guys. It's just sparkly and fabulous. So I added it to those images, let that dry. And while it was drying, I'm using my white gel pen to add just little dots here and there onto the little critters. Not necessarily like highlights. I've talked about this before. I don't often follow like light sources with any of my coloring. It's a good thing to learn, you know, especially with shading and all that. Highly recommend it. There's a lot of makers that like really go into that sort of thing. Like Christina Warner's a great one because she'll also even share like shadow studies and stuff that she'll do before she starts coloring. And it does add a ton of like depth and whatnot to coloring. I just kind of slap the color on, go on about my day. So I used my white gel pen to add all the little dots and whatnot. And then I took out my black gel pen and added little, like just enhanced their little eyes and then the little dog and bear's nose. I don't do this very often, but it's something I see Nicole Spohr do in her videos. And I love how it just makes them like just stand out a little bit more. So when I was coloring this, I was like, that's right, I need to pull out my black gel pen. So I did that. And same thing, when I show the like sparkle at the end, it'll pick up the shine of their little noses and the eyes. It's a cute little extra. So by now the shimmer on these other images was dry, so I can go right over it with my gel pen to add the little highlights to the balloons and a few little dots here and there and whatnot to the gift and the little bees. And then I can use the coordinating wafer dies to die cut everything. So I'm going to tape the coordinating wafer dies into place so that they don't shift when I run it through my die cut machine. And you can see that one for the little images, it's one wafer die that cuts out all three at once. Love. And then I'm going to die cut my little critters as well. So get everything die cut. And then for my like interactive element, I'm using this Open Sesame portrait wafer die set. So I die cut a piece of gray cardstock with it, and it creates this fun little almost like pinking edge. There's a little bit of stitch detail around the border, and then it's got these two like flaps that just cut and then also scores on each side so that they can open. So I die cut that first, and then there's two little like frame options. The other one looks more kind of like shutters. But I took this one that's like a window pane, and I'm going to kind of center it on the one little flap there, tape that into place, run it through my die cut machine, and then repeat it on the other one. So it's just going to create kind of 2 open windows. And then I also die cut some scraps of black cardstock with that same wafer die, and that I'm keeping the frame in, and I'm going to inlay that in a minute here. So then to make these like actual like little windows, I grabbed some acetate from my stash. And this acetate has like tissue in between the layers. So I usually keep that sort of in place because it kind of helps me see what I'm doing. And then I was just using the little window wafer die as kind of a guide, and then just trimmed the acetate to just slightly larger than this so I can adhere it behind each of these flaps. It's going to create my faux glass. So the first piece happened to be a right size, so I'm going to just use that and just hold it in place and use my scissors and trim the second piece to the exact same size. So once I've got these trimmed out, I need to adhere them to the cardstock. And I've talked about this before when it comes to like adhering like plastic, acetate, etc. I prefer to use things like score tape or redline tape. However, these are very narrow little frames, and I was like, I'm not even my narrowest like 1/8 of an inch like score tape or redline tape wouldn't fit on this. And I was like, I'm not trimming sticky tape like that. So we're going to use liquid adhesive. So I used my craft tacky glue and the precision glue press and the one with the really fine tip, and just put a thin line down there. I still had a tiny bit ooze out. This is why I prefer like sticky tapes with acetate, but this was fine. And the tiny bit that oozed out is going to get covered by the black window frames. So did that to the second piece, just a tiny little line all around the perimeter there of the adhesive, and then press the acetate into place. When you do use liquid glue with things like this, you need to let it sit and dry for a lot longer than it would normally take, because with paper and cardstock, the glue is like absorbing into the cardstock. So things start to set up and adhere within, a minute or 2. But when you're working with acetate, it takes a lot longer for the glue to dry. So just especially with an interactive element like this, once I get everything in place, I let that sit for a while. And, I just work on other things. So the little frames, same thing. Very thin line of glue for this. And I just worked my way around all the little bits here of the frames, and then inlaid that right on top of the acetate on these little window pieces. So got that into place, put it under a big acrylic block, let it sit and dry. And then I took just a little stylus tool and I used my little score buddy, and I'm just reinforcing the little score line that was already there, that was created by the wafer die, and flipped it over, reinforced it again. This way it'll help the little window panes to open and close a bit better by reinforcing that with my little stylus tool. So I just kind of went over that a couple times on each of these little pieces, and then carefully open these up. And I was being careful because I was being impatient and wasn't letting the glue fully dry. Like, as always, do as I say, not as I do. So everything was working, set that all aside. And then for my background, I just took a piece of the same smooth white cardstock, and I pulled out, this is the Simon Says Stamp Cloud Lines stencil set. And started at the top, and I'm using some positively saturated ink. This is the Seafoam, so the lightest shade, and a blending brush. And you just insert your cardstock. You could trim these apart if you want, so you have like 3 separate pieces. I still haven't bothered to do that. It works just like this. I just slide in the cardstock, and then I move it around with each layer of these clouds, so I get like, different shapes with each one. And yeah, blend the ink onto this. Again, just like sped this up in editing. I've done a bajillion cloud backgrounds on my channel. So blended all the way till I got to the bottom of this piece. Once I was happy with it, I'm going to add just a little bit more ink to the top and the bottom of this panel, just like so. So we've got our little cloudy background. And then I grabbed a scrap of green cardstock, and I'm using another oldie but goodie. This is the Simon Says Stamp Grassy Edges wafer die. So I die cut the green cardstock with that, trimmed off the ends with my paper trimmer. And then I got to trim down this background so it's smaller than the window frame. So I ended up trimming it down to like 3 3/4 by 5 inches. Again, just like so. And then I'm going to somewhat lay out some of these images. I just needed a visual as to where to place the sentiment, because there's 2 sentiments in the little Peekabuddies set. And the one I wanted to use, I want to make sure that it shows up inside this little window frame. So kind of lined everything up, kept the stamp in place while I put the background into my MISTI so I can stamp this image with that just same intense black ink. So ink that up, stamp that onto my background. And then for the inside of the card, my card base is a top folding A2 white note card. And I pulled out another kind of oldie but goodie set. This is the Mama Elephant Wishes Enclosed set. And I'll link to the set. There is also a coordinating die set for this, which I have, but I didn't end up using the die set, but I'll include a link to it for anyone who's interested. So I inked up the happy birthday sentiment with that same seafoam ink, and then took one of the little sub sentiments, lined that up, and I'm going to stamp that with the intense black ink. So got that stamped. And then now I can start assembling my little scene. So I'm going to adhere that little grass die cut to the bottom of this. Get that into place. I can flip it over and then just trim off the excess with my scissors. And then this is where liquid glue comes in really handy. I use this to adhere the little critters, and it gives me a little bit of wiggle room so I can get things lined up properly here. So move things around a bit. And then I'm going to start sticking in these little balloon clusters. So get those adhered into place, and then I'm going to add those little tiny dandelions along the bottom there. So I'm going to just stick those into place as well, just kind of tuck them in amongst the grass, and then add one of my little bee buddies, get him in there. So got all of those adhered, and then for the actual frame, I decided to pop it up just a bit. So I'm just using Simon's Big Mama foam tape, and need to trim this in half because I've got a bit of a narrower margin here around this frame. So trim that down so that I can just run this around the edges of this die cut. And then once I get all of the foam tape into place, I can pop this onto the background. So this is also where Simon's Positively Everything Scissors, there's a name for them. I like this stuff for foam tape. These ones are like the least or the most resistant to sticking, because especially if you've ever worked with a Big Mama foam tape, this stuff is sticky. Still one of my favorites though. So I struggled trying to get the background lined up, so instead I just flipped everything over and did it upside down. It was just easier that way. So got that popped into place, and I've got my little window scene. Love it. And then I can adhere this directly to my card base. And then as a final little bit of embellishment, I added those little the little gifts and the other little remaining bee. I'm going to just stick those onto the inside of the card. So I'm just going to adhere them into place with craft tacky glue. And then once those are adhered, this card is complete. Now, and I added little just dot detail. I just took a black pen and added a little dot detail, like little trails for the bee on the outside. And then since I did it on the inside, I did it on the outside as well. Just made a little swirly trail for the bee, just cuz. And that finished off the card. So we got our little window scene that opens, so you can see the little critters and their balloons and the sentiment. And then I'll turn on the flashlight on my phone to show you guys like the sparkle that I added to the balloons and the gifts. And I also added it to the bee's little wings, which is really hard to show on camera. But you can see the sparkle. It's fabulous. I love my Nouveau Aqua Shimmer pens. Because they're subtle, but when the light hits it, and then you can see the shine from the black glaze pen on their little noses and eyes. It's just so fun. So that finished off the card. Like I mentioned in the intro, I will have a supply list with links to all the things in the description box below the video, so you can just expand that and check it out if you're interested. Thank you all so very much for taking the time to watch my videos, for thumbs upping and commenting and letting the robot overlords know you like what you see. It genuinely helps, and I really appreciate it. Subscribe if you haven't. I'd love to have you, and I'll see you all very soon in the next video. Bye.